Hey, everybody, welcome back to another fantastic edition of the His and Her Money Show, where we make it our business to help you take dominion over your money and your life. We are grateful to have you tuned in to another fantastic episode. We know you are going to love this and you're going to be inspired by today's episode. Do us a favor if you have not done so already. If you love this podcast and you're listening through the audio version, we could definitely use a 5-star review, letting other people know that this is a show that they should listen to as well. As always, guys, we encourage you to get out your pen and paper, your notes app, because we do shows that you're going to want to take notes and write the nuggets and jewels down, because our goal with this show is not just to entertain you, but to equip you for what you have in front of you to do. So today's show is going to be inspirational because we're going to be talking with a couple who has been working hard on their debt-free journey, and they are bold enough to come and share what they've been through, the good, the bad, and the ugly, so you can know what to expect and how to craft out your own journey to debt freedom. We're going to be talking with Marcus and Daneen, and they are here to talk about everything debt freedom. So get ready, tune in, let's go. Hey, Marcus. Hey, Daneen. Welcome to the His and Her Money Show.
Hello.
What's going on? How you doing
How
today?
you doing today?
We're doing well. So glad to have you here with us. We are excited to hear, because you guys have been working incredibly hard to change your financial situation around and become debt free. And we know that you have a lot to tell us about how things have been going. But before we get into your story, for people that are being introduced to you for the first time, can you say hello to them and then kind of let them know what you two are all about?
Ladies first.
Go ahead.
All right, my name is Marcus, and this is my lovely wife, Dominic. She's the brains of this outfit, clearly, and the beauty. I'm just kind of here soaking up the ambiance. But essentially, we just decided at some point in 2020, due to some circumstances, to change our financial situation. I mean, we've been on the full gamut of, living paycheck to paycheck, getting to a point where we had a little bit of excess, but we never really did things the right way. We never really did things collectively together. So, we just decided in 2020 to change our circumstances. And, we have the ability and are blessed to have the capability to dig out of a hole. So we wanted to just kind of put our heads together and make it happen.
Yeah, I would just add that, we kind of had our ducks in a row a little bit before 2020. We just did it separately. So like we were always kind of in tune with our finances from our early in our relationship. We just kind of just managed our money separately, and we decided to put it together to get this debt down collectively.
For us, it was one of those things where, in pursuit of the American dream, we, went to college. We and we did everything probably that if you want to go to school, do everything the opposite of how we did it. We maxed out the student loans. We didn't wait a year to get the in-state tuition. We took more loans than we needed, to cover some living costs. So we kind of, early on had dug, a financial hole, and the vast majority of that was from, I would say, student loans. Would you?
Yeah, student loans in grad school though, grad school and law school, because student loans from undergrad we weren't really. If we would have just kind of paid off our undergrad before we went to grad school, if we had the mindset that we have now, we probably wouldn't dig as much of a hole that we had. But because it was all added up at the end of the day, right?
Right.
So
So we had all of that debt, and then you go through like every, I think, cycle for a student. You graduate, you get a job. It may be a little bit of underemployment where you aren't really making enough to sustain the family. So you're kind of doing things, what's the old saying that my mother used, robbing Peter to pay Paul, so to speak. So we kind of went through that cycle. Then we got into the car loans. I was doing the credit card thing, not really knowing what I was doing. And then we actually had a break where, we had a career opportunity to allow us to increase our income, so we were able to increase our income, but we really didn't do the right thing. And me personally, I felt like we got to a point where we were like, oh man, now we're actually making enough. let's actually enjoy it. So we went through this stage of we were making enough and we were really kind of enjoying it, but not really putting our money to work for us. And so we were kind of in that cycle. We took the same money habits we had when we were engaged and brought those over into our marriage. So she had her thing, I had my thing. We never combined it. And it wasn't until 2020 on my wife's birthday, um, I had a brain aneurysm. I literally woke up at midnight and told my wife happy birthday, and I went into another room to watch TV, and I got a strange headache, which I never get headaches. And it was maybe 5 to 7 minutes of me feeling bad. Ambulance came. After about 5 to 7, 10 minutes, I felt fine, and I was like, that was weird. Well, let me go to the ER anyway. And as I'm sitting in the emergency room, I call the wife. I'm like, because this is 1 0 dark 30 in the morning. Like, hey, you stay at home with the kids. I call her. I'm like, hey, I'm okay. They running tests, and every doctor kept coming by. I was, just looking at my chart. Then they would look at me and shake their head. And so, like, the final doctor came and said, "Man, you're doing a lot better than your chart should say." And I was like, "Come again?" And his reply was, "Oh, you had a ruptured brain aneurysm." Now, I was 38 at the time. I exercise all the time, in relatively good shape, good health. Just had this random anomaly, and of course, that resulted in me having to have 3 brain surgeries in a 90-day period. Of course, they go in to stop the rupture, and then what do they say? The same thing you don't want to hear from your mechanic. We took care of this, but while we were in there, we found this. And so they found something else that needed to be removed. Of course, I elected to have surgery because after doing research, I was like, no to chemo. Not doing anything wasn't an option. But the entire time I sat in the ICU, and my wife probably was more concerned about my physical, well-being and everything, but I just was doing math the entire time. I was just doing math. I was saying, I got this insurance policy, this property, this money and savings. And it was at that point where I called my wife and I was like, we got to get our money together. Is a little bit ridiculous. We could do a lot better. So that was, for me, was the turning point. Then I went to my wife and said, we got to do some things different.
Yeah, it was literally like that. I mean, I couldn't be in the hospital with him because, of course, of COVID. So I'm like at home worried, don't know really what's going on initially, and then when I finally get to talk to him, he's talking to me about money, and I'm like, wait a minute, what? Like, it's like you had a brain aneurysm. You're talking. Let's talk about your health. But I mean, it also made sense to me because at the same time, while he was in the hospital and he was having these surgeries, I was at a point where I was like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? Like if something happened to him, I wouldn't know what to do. Like I was so at a loss, and just the idea of trying to manage all the things, the overhead, the kids, and everything financially, it kind of just scared me a little bit because I really didn't know as much as I thought I knew. Um, as far as just, I mean, yeah, like you said, life insurance policies, finance, mortgage, and I we 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 handled it together, but at the same time, he more so managed it by himself. So everything that he was doing, I wasn't privy to before this situation happened. And so I kind of was, once he started talking to me about it, I was just like, yeah, we need to get this together because this was scary, and I wouldn't even know what to do if I had to do it by myself.
Man, okay. Plot twist. So you have these brain. Where first of all, thank God that you guys are good. You're here. So that would mean that the surgeries were successful. Grateful for that. But this, seemingly catastrophic event made you guys reprioritize everything, especially your finances. So, as you stated, Daneen, he come out of the hospital talking about money. He ain't even talking about like rehab or physical therapy or whatever needs to be done. He like, we need to get this money together. So pick up the story there. I guess that's the point where you all realize that, hey, let's do this jointly. Let's stop doing this thing separately. How did those conversations go?
I think the first one was emergency fund because we didn't have one. So here we are in this catastrophic event,
Mm-hmm.
and if something was to happen, I can't pick up the load just on my salary alone. So, and of course, as we know, life insurance, there's a process for that. So it's like, oh, wait a minute, we have funds, but we're not saving our funds to just in case something happens. Let's start there. Like we need to have a
Right.
savings
Right.
for emergencies. So I think that's kind of how it probably started, right?
Yeah. We had maybe a couple $1,000s, but a part of that was this kind of blind security based on that employment. Like we're always going to have our employment. It's pretty secure. So the chances of like oh, you're terminated are really slim, just kind of in the fields we were in. So because of that security, our logic was one of we don't need to have this huge emergency fund for these months and months because like, we got some leave. It'll always be some form of income coming in. So the emergency fund was the first thing, and we had things together. We had joint check-in account and joint saving account, so everybody had visibility of stuff. It was really just kind of in the planning and allocation. Like I'm taking care of this bill, and this bill. So I had no visibility of the bills she took care of. I knew what she took care of,
Right.
but as long as they got paid, I didn't ask any questions, and it was kind of
Yeah.
that way for both of us. So what we ultimately decided after having that conversation, I knew as I sat in the hospital thinking, I was like, the biggest thing to tackle is going to be the student loans. Between the two of us, we had $239,000 in student loan. Not to mention two vehicles, credit cards, TSP loans. I mean, we had everything except the payday loan. That was probably the only thing we didn't have. And so I knew it was going to be the elephant in the room, the student loan. Because me, once I get a goal to see something, I'm like, oh, we can do this. We can knock this out. We were blessed to have a big hole, but have a pretty decent sized shovel just from the progression in our career. And so, after sitting down, having a conversation with our wife, my wife, I don't think initially it was. I'm gonna be honest. Initially, she's kind of one of those people who like, okay, we could do it. I'm like, let's do it. She's like, I got to see this thing through and work first. So we were kind of at a little bit of a stalemate because I was like, hey, let's do it this way and go hardcore and do this. And she was kind of like, let's kind of do that, but not really. So it was kind of a little back and forth there.
It was mainly because I was one of those people like my student loan. I'm just gonna die with my student loan. So I was like, okay, I'll pay it, but whatever, it's just gonna be there. That's where we were like at a yeah. I think our opinions differed in that aspect until we took the financial literacy class. I think that's when I changed my mind, right?
Yeah. It was the we took the FPU class. I had an epiphany, and I thought about it when I was teaching my son how to swim. I said, sometimes it's easier for somebody else to give someone information and them accept it than me. So I said, I've wasted money on stupid stuff. I paid for an FPU class, and I was like, I'm gonna let Dave Ramsey drill this point that we could pay this student loan off because and I mean, trust me, I got to the point. I don't know if you remember where I proverbial put my foot down. And by putting my foot down, that means that I had a man tantrum. I was like, well, if you don't want to do it, that's fine. I'm gonna do it. And once I'm making progress, my foot is down.
Yeah.
Once I'm making progress,
Don't
don't try to
ask me
don't
for
try to
nothing.
jump on the don't try to jump on the bandwagon. So I put my foot down because I was in my feelings. I, was, I can admit it. I was in my feelings. So I put the proverbial foot down. She started to see me make some progress on the cars and things, but that FPU class was really what pushed her over the edge. Like, I think we can tackle these student loans. And
Yeah.
though that was when we really got started once we took that FPU class.
And now I'm really like, I want to pay off my student loan because I want to retire. So I'm like, let's get this out of the way. That's the major debt. So I'm like, let's get this out of the way so that we can retire and we can enjoy life.
Good stuff. Now, before we move forward into the how and what you did, let's give context. So, once you guys realized you needed to get out of debt and you started pulling out the calculator, how much debt was the total? You talked about the student loans and you named cars, you named TSP. So when it was all said and done, your starting line was what? And then tell everybody where you're at in that process now.
Okay, so the numbers are going to sound kind of scary. I wanted to memorialize it so I could document it. So I started recording and putting things on YouTube just because it's easier to do it that way as opposed to me to come back and see everything. So the initial numbers were over $740,000 when we included the mortgage to our primary residence, and that accounted for about, let's say, $430,000. So we were we were well into the $300 some odd $1,000 of non-primary mortgage debt was really the starting point where we were at, and it was you know it didn't even hit me until I made that video and I wrote it on a board that sat on this wall, and I looked at it and I was like, man, am I in over my head? These numbers are huge. And some of the comments weren't the most encouraging. They was like, man, you got to make better decisions. I do got to make better decisions. I do.
And then thus far, you guys started your journey. How much of it have you gotten rid of?
Okay, so we started that journey in uh, August of 2020. I about to say that's about the time we started. By August 2021, we had paid off $169,000 of debt, two cars, every credit card, every TSP loan. We had the big thing that gave us some headway. We had a rental property that we had in down south, and I really wanted to keep it, but we talked about it and thought about it, and the question came up is, how serious are you about getting out of debt? Because that property, the mortgage on that was about $80,000 in and of itself. It was a hot market. We were able to get rid of that and make some progress. But so far, that was our first year, 169. Right now, we're at about $215,000 paid off since 2020, and we had really a big blessing. I mean, it's amazing, but one of the things that was really a blessing in disguise for us was just kind of how things went in 2020. It was a crazy year, but because we weren't required to make payments on our student loans and there were no interest accrued, that first year in 2020, we said, let's focus on everything else: cars, rental property, credit cards. And we were able to make progress on that. So by the time we started in 2021, the only things we had left are our student loans, outside of our principal mortgage on our primary residence.
Man. Talk about mental toughness here. When you got the calculator out, that's a big number, man. I mean, that'd be enough to make you want to quit before you start. So how did you process that and continue to move forward? And what would be your advice to somebody who's getting ready to pull out that calculator and do the math and may be shocked with what they find?
Goes.
Yeah, I would say don't be discouraged. Of course, that number is huge, but it once you kind of itemize what you have and tackle those small things first, I think well, for me, I think it kind of lessened the heartache of that huge number. So I didn't really focus on, once we itemized it, I really tried to just focus on the small things of what I can do right now, so that number, the overall number, can come down. So and I mean, I just kept saying, like, it in the end, like, I seen the light at the end of the tunnel, and I just tried to mainly just focus on that. Like, there is a light. I know that this can be done. I kind of self motivation and just saying don't be discouraged, really.
And I would say, for me, I'm probably one of those people where I can compartmentalize things to a fault. Once I get my mindset that I'm gonna do something, I'm reading all the books, I'm doing all the things. So I knew all the statistics and the data points. And for me, it was really one of those things of thinking, like, we're in a position to where our children could never have to worry about anything that we worried about. Student loans for them would be something that's non-existent. We're in a position, if we make the moves now. I know that the average first generation millionaire is about 49 or 50 years old. We could put ourselves in a position to do that sooner than what people typically do it on average. So for me, it was one of those things where I knew what the destination was. And we also had to have a conversation where, I sat down with my wife and I was like, what does retirement look like for you? Like we had to sit down and say, what does retirement at the end of the day when all this is said and done look like? So that way we know what our vision is. Then we were able to implement a strategy. We were able to look at the numbers and start crunching the numbers to determine how much we would need. And so, I'm really a numbers guy. So I kind of look at what is the compounding interest going to be? How much will we need to, have in every month an income to be able to live the lifestyle we want when we're in our 60s? So that was it for me, just kind of having that long-term vision and knowing that you're going to, because trust me, I had budget burnout a few times where, after going hard for 2 or 3 months, I was like, let's just go buy something off the, let's just go buy something. We do have those periods where we fall off.
And I'm a travel person. So I always want to take a trip. I need to go somewhere. So that was my release. I'm like, listen, we can put this money away for this travel. I'm going to California. I'm going somewhere.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, one of the things too was I actually, when I was going to this process, I actually, and checking out y'all content, one of the ways that y'all did it were, y'all was like, hey, we still went on trips and we still did those things. We just kind of planned it and budgeted out. We didn't do anything just off the cuff, without any planning and strategy. And that was one thing that stuck with me, even though the Dave Ramsey principle has a good foundation and blueprint for me. When you're sitting in the hospital, the other thing I thought about was I don't want to go so hard for a 2 or 3 year period where I deprive my family of everything because we never know what tomorrow brings. And, I would hate for something, Lord forbid, I would hate for something to happen and we just been going hard for, we didn't take the time to enjoy each other. We didn't take the time to have those memories. So we kind of bit a page out of y'all book like, hey, we can do this. We can do it at a fast pace, but we also take the time out to have a little enjoyment as well.
Imagine a life where your money isn't strangled by mortgage payments. Imagine what you could do when you don't have to send them money that you work so hard for. Come get simple, powerful, and real solutions to eliminating monthly mortgage payments forever. America's #1 money couple presents Crush My Mortgage. In this exclusive course, you will be equipped with strategies to help you move faster toward the promised land of owning your house free and clear. Learn strategies to help you in the areas of payment acceleration, extra income generation, and wealth creation, all to help you crush your mortgage. Visit crushmymortgage.com and get started today. Join us on the path to power, freedom, and legacy. That's crushmymortgage.com.
Yeah, for us, it's important to continue to live as you are trying to change your life. Continue to live. In the Bible, it tells us that for those who are faith-based, that we're supposed to run the race that is set before us with endurance. That key word is endurance. It means it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And for some people, as you said, they go hard, but they don't have the endurance, and then they burn out completely out the game. And so you got to ask yourself, what's going to provide me with the endurance to continue on this race? And so that's why for us, and it sounds like for you all as well, we needed to be intentional about doing the things that brought us life, not just us focused on changing our life, but we need to do the things that bring us life so that we have the endurance to keep going. And for us and for you all and for anybody listening and watching, you just have to have a plan. Okay. A budget is just you making a plan for your money. The budget doesn't tell you what to do. You're telling it what to do. And so if things like that or date nights are important, they should be, then factor that in, budget for it, make it a part of the journey so that you have the endurance to continue to progress all the way to the finish line. So kudos to y'all for incorporating that in this process. So what was the approach? You talked about the fact that there was a moratorium on the federal student loans. We talked about here on the show, and you didn't have your interest payments. You didn't have to make payments at all. And so then you, in your mind, said, let's tackle all these other things. So talk about how you prioritized all the other things, how you attacked all the other things.
Right. Well, I tell you, I pretty much come up with the idea, then I run it past the boss over here, and she give her stamp of approval. So for me, it's that concept, and and doing the research and looking, you hear that snowball, that avalanche, you hear all these different ways. Pay off the highest interest first, pay off the lowest balance first. So with us, we kind of took a hybrid approach, I would say. We started off initially with those smaller credit cards that were a couple of thousands of dollars because we knew $1,000 or $2,000 we could make some quick progress, and it felt good just to see it go to zero, and also be able to reach back out because we still are in contact with some of the people from our financial class that we attended. So to go back and be like, oh yeah, we knocked out this, that kind of gave us motivation as we started moving and progressing, knocking out smaller debts. I really just got to a point where things that annoyed me the most was what I wanted to get rid of. At some point, there were a few smaller debts out there, but I looked at like our car balance and it was so high. And I remember seeing a video where somebody said, "Nothing drives better than a car that's paid for." And I want to experience that. Let's move from these. Let's focus on the cars. So we kind of took a hybrid approach of just kind of jumping around from different things that annoyed us the most, but because at the end of the day, we knew that no matter what approach we took, if we keep being consistent, we're going to see progress, even if it was a lower balance credit card or a card that maybe we owed $15,000 or $20,000 on. So that was our approach. It was just a hybrid of do what worked for us in that particular moment.
So I'm sure people want to know, does a paid off car drive better?
I will tell you, a paid off car drives way better.
Yeah.
But I will also tell you that
we've had a couple of
between car maintenance, I was like, man, like I'm like, do I need to start an emergency fund for the emergency fund just for car maintenance? Because it can get a little ridiculous at times.
And in those situations, we got to reevaluate. We like, okay, is it worth paying for the maintenance, or is it worth getting a new car and having a car payment? And the maintenance is always better. Like it's like, okay, well, let's just pay $2,000 to get this fixed versus going out and getting a whole $24,000 car and then having a whole payment. So
yeah.
So I'm curious because you all had to do a whole lot of communicating. Was it hard to start? Has it been hard since? There's at least one half of a couple listening right now, and I'm sure they're going to send this episode to their significant other, and they know they need to get on the same page and conversate and communicate way better about their financial situation. How were you all able to develop that muscle, and what would be your word of advice to people trying to get stronger in that area?
I would start because I think that I wasn't communicating at first. I was kind of like, oh, why does he want to see what I'm spending my money on? Like, it was kind of hard for me, to be honest. Like, I was like, okay, we got to put this money into this app, and he sees what I'm spending, and I got to log everything. And because sometimes I would sneak a couple of packages in the house. So I'm like, no, he don't need to see. But once I started seeing the end result of what he was really doing, I was like, okay, let me get on board and let me start really just opening up. I had to like really open up and allow myself to be able to share this with my husband. Like, I'm just like, okay, he can see, it's okay. Like, because also if he did see me spend something, and he'd be like, I don't know why you hide that. It's okay. Like, we have the money to do it. And so he kind of like reassured me, like, if you make small purchases, it's okay sometimes, because he also knows that I'm really only buying things that we need. I'm not buying things that I've never been like a frivolous spender. Oh, I just have to have every name brand in the car. I've never been that person, but I do like to shop. I do. So when he would reassure me, that kind of made me feel a little better. and opening up to communicate with him as far as what I was spending my, my money on, because he does give me an allowance. We have a certain allowance that we can spend monthly. I have one, he has one, and how we do it, how we spend it is completely up to us.
Yeah, and that's I would say at some point you just got to have the discussion. I feel like I see so many young people like, oh, we have, marriage counseling and we talk about each other's credit and all of these things before we get engaged. And I was like, man, that would have been good to know 20 years ago. We just was like, hey, I love you. I love you too. Let's do this thing. And then when we pulled out the paperwork, we was like, man, we got some problems here, sister. But I think just having that initial conversation and getting it out of the way, I think you're always going to have that where one person's motivated and the other person may need to see a little bit of proof, see that what you have planned is actually working. And there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody, we all buy into things differently. But having that initial communication, having transparency, because that's kind of where I'm at. Like if within our budget you have spending money that's yours, I have spending money that's mine. What you elect to do with the spending money, I could honestly care less about it, as long as it complies with what we have within the budget. Like, hey, if you want to go to Starbucks 50 times, like me, with my spending money, I like to invest my spending money. So like I buy Starbucks stock, she buys Starbucks coffee. That's just we had this big week and having this conversation. As I invested my spending money, and she's just like the dust, and she started investing it. I'm not going to chastise her. She has started investing, but it led to a question of just a hypothetical, and take the eyes of the law out of it. I said if I invest my spending money, my couple $100 a month, and I invest it, and you just spend the money for whatever. But let's say 10 years down the road, my investments grow to $20,000, and I kind of put that comment out on social media, like we know everybody, all married couples are assets combined. That's how we do things. But some of the responses were hilarious. One young lady replied, "Well, it depends. If if I invested the money, is my money. If he invested it, is our money." But we always take the our money approach with everything. Even when I invest my spending money, I mean, I'm so excited when it does well. I'm like, hey, look what it did. And when it doesn't do well, she knows, because I never talk about it. I just be quiet and pray that the market recovers. But that's it. Just have the conversation.
Yeah, and because we talk about it, it also leads to jokes sometimes. Like we just we will talk about it and joking, like, well, you go spend your money on whatever. But it lightens the mood when we do that, so that you can have the conversation,
right?
Because we can laugh about it, because we know that, at the end of the day, we're in this together. So
You all are in this together, and you guys are also parents. So I'm curious about, are they part of your motivation? Are they part of your conversation? Are they involved? Do they know what's going on? How have you used this financial journey to inform your parenthood practices as well?
So yeah, he talks to my son a lot about investing. I just kind of teach my daughter about, like, just say, because she will hold on to a penny. Now, if she gets birthday money, she will not spend it. She will put it up in her piggy bank, and she will have it. And so I always talk to her about, like, just saving her money, because I was like that too when I was a kid. Like, my lunch money, I would save my lunch money. I will put it up. So I explained to her that's a good habit to have. That you're starting early to save your money. So, and then Marcus talks about investing, because my son works. So he always talks about, a portion of his paycheck should be put aside for investments, so that, for future investments, it'll pay off in the long run. What do we?
And so I would say we do have those conversations. I'm going to add a caveat to my daughter. I think my daughter also smart enough to know that she can finesse dad by leaving her stuff. I was like, my son, it's harder for him to finesse me. She'll leave her stuff, and then the next thing I know, I'll come from the store like, well, how about this? So see, my daughter got a little gamesmanship, but I do have conversations with both of them. My son is a little bit older, so I mean, I got a video with me and him. We're talking about Roblox stock when the IPO dropped. because he plays Roblox. I had no clue what it was. He had to explain that, oh, it's more than the game, and he was able to break some things down for me. So I do have those conversations. My son, my daughter, they both have investments accounts, and something that I started recently is like, once a week, I just kind of sit them down and just quiz them on the basics of finance. Like, okay, what is a stock? What is an IRA? What is those little small things just to kind of develop those habits? But the key thing that I want to really impart on them, especially my son, because he's a little bit older, is you can enjoy what you work for now, but you have to put some aside for emergency. You have to invest some for the future, and you have to give in some capacity. I think that is I feel like that's kind of the missing ingredient for us personally. I think giving has its own benefits and it has its own rewards. And I mean, there's data that show when you give something, your brain creates more dopamine than if you actually receive a gift. So, those are the things we try to encourage and instill with our kids that, hey, if y'all do this right, you guys can start really early. And by the time you're 35, 40, like if you want to do anything, venture off into anything, regardless of what the potential income opportunity is, you'll have that luxury to be able to do so.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So what's next? You all are still in the journey. What type of projections are you making? What's your approach for the rest of the debt?
Well, from a projection standpoint, it's interesting because a lot of it is some external factors. So I'm go ahead and knock on wood now, cross my fingers, and also say a prayer that hopefully this forbearance get extended. If I, hey, if somebody in Washington could go ahead and find a way to get an extension, maybe get it out another to 2024 sometime, we can make some real progress. So we do have to wait and kind of see how that is. Right now, our goal is on our first student loan, my student loan, we started off at $109,000. We're at about $38,000 now. So our short-term goal is to try to pay that one off by the end of the calendar year. If we can pay that off by the end of the calendar year, then we'll only have my wife's $130,000 student loan remaining. That'll be the only thing outside of our mortgage. We're going to make progress. And it's kind of working because we do have some side hustles. My wife has some side hustles that she's working to bring in extra income. Me as well, from putting out, just finance stuff on my channel and on TikTok and all of that stuff. So we do have some ways to kind of supplement things, but we're just going to keep moving forward with the journey. Try to knock out that student loan this year. Our ultimate goal is if we can potentially have off everything, the remaining of my student loan, my wife's student loan paid off within the next 3 years. That'll put us in. One thing we don't want to do is I don't want my son to be in college while I'm still paying for my college. I felt like I'm gonna feel a little silly if we get to that point. So we got about 36 months or so, a little bit more to get to that point.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. You guys have been knocking it out the park. Super proud of the progress that you all have been making. If there's somebody listening, like, they've been on the fence, been talking about this money thing, this debt-free thing for a while, but haven't gotten past the starting line. And they're listening right now. What would be the words of encouragement you will offer to them to get them off the fence and get them in motion?
I would say just jump in and just start. Even if it's just looking at your smallest Walmart credit card bill, you pay that off, and I guarantee you will feel good about that first step. If you pay that off and you see that zero balance, that doesn't mean go charge back on it. If you see that progress, I mean, just keep going. That's the first thing to do is just go for it head first, like one foot in front of the other. Once you start and you see that zero balance, it's a good feeling, and I would encourage you to just keep going.
Yeah, and for me, it's more of a mental thing. I think that a lot of people, and I want to say this and not be discouraging, but a lot of people, when you want to start your journey to whatever your definition of financial freedom is a lot of people. I mean, I had people in my family who called me cheap. People in my family who like, oh, you tight with your money. You don't want to do this or you don't want to do that. A lot of times, if you want to do something different or want a different outcome, you have to do something different. And sometimes you have to be a little bit different, and you may be the outlier in your family, in your community, if you want to be the person to break a generational curse. And that could be a generational curse with anything, relationships, with finance, with parenting. You have to be different, and you have to understand that everybody's not going to see the same vision as you. So if you can, I think one of the biggest things for me was being able to find, a few people, and unfortunately it is a small group, but you are able to find some like-minded people out there who you can talk about these things with, because everybody isn't going to want to hear your conversation of your vision of wealth, or you're not doing this, or delayed gratification over here to have a benefit down the road. So if you can find someone who's on the same page. A lot of the people who are on the same page for me are people I actually met through social media groups, through YouTube, who are actually doing the same thing. Those are some of the biggest motivators and encouragers for me. I look and see their progress. They encourage me on my journey. So if you can find someone out there who think like-minded, put yourself in that circle, and that'll really give you that push you need, because sometimes your biggest motivators and supporters are going to be people who you may not have in your immediate friend circle at the moment.
Yeah, good advice. Now, if people want to keep up with you all as you continue to document your journey, where do they find you?
So you can find us, and we're tracking that journey, doing financial literacy on YouTube at Debt Free Dad. We're also on Instagram at Official Debt Free Dad. I'm getting new to TikTok, but I don't dance that often. But Debt Free Dad on TikTok as well. And in August, we're going to launch the official Debt Free Dad website. The goal of that website is going to be, one, to have some free deliverables, budget spreadsheets, trackers, but we're also going to do kind of a blog where you talk about family and finances to hopefully help people along their way, and give them some motivation.
Awesome. We'll be sure to have everything you mentioned in the show notes of this episode. Marcus and Daneen, thank you so much for your willingness to come on the His and Her Money Show and share your story with us today.
Hey, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Thank
Take
you
care.
so much.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another fantastic edition of the His and Her Money Show is complete. We hope that you were motivated by the story that Marcus and Daneen shared with you today. And we hope that you're motivated to the point to create or continue inside of your story. We want you to get free too. We want you to feel what it's like to be on the other side of that debt, so you can start living a life on purpose instead of a life filled with payments. That's all we got for this time, guys. It's been great. Until next time, peace.